Well, if you click this video, you're probably like me and you like Minecraft and you like Reddit stories, or maybe you just like Reddit stories and don't really care about what's on the screen. Regardless, you found the right place. I am a real person. I'm not an AI. So let's just get straight into this. With story number 1, am I the a-hole for declining to walk my daughter down the aisle at her wedding? About 8 years ago, I got a message on Facebook from a teenager asking if I knew her mother back in college, because she might actually be my kid. Now, after I got over the shock, I messaged her back. We talked a little bit. I paid for a DNA test, and turns out I have a daughter. We'll call her Jenny. Man, talk about quite the surprise in your Facebook messages. Hey, by the way, I think I'm your kid. We talked for a little bit. I got to know her stepdad, Jim, and her mom, Tina. On a side note, I didn't even know her last name 25 years ago. And on my own side note, as just the reader of this story, my guy is a menace, dude. He didn't know her last name and she has a kid with her. Oh my goodness. Alongside Jim and her mom, I also got to know her younger half siblings, and they're all pretty cool. In particular, I cannot praise Jim enough. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met and is basically the equivalent of a human teddy bear. Overall, I'd say Jenny and I have a decent enough relationship. I never married and I don't have any other children, so I've been taking her on vacations with me, and she spent a few holidays at my house. But overall, I'd say our relationship is much more like that of two adults rather than a parent and a child. She doesn't call me dad, she calls Jim dad and me just Matt. I contributed to her college fund, but not as much as Jim and Tina did, and that wasn't a big deal for me because I make a lot more money than they do and have no other kids. I'm going to interject here. I'm assuming that's maybe a typo because the way that sentence is structured, it sounds like he contributed more to her college fund, since he's saying it wasn't a big deal for him since he makes a lot more money and has no other kids. But in the actual sentence, he says he didn't contribute as much as Jim and Tina. So again, I'm going to assume that was just a typo and that he did contribute more. I don't know. Anyways, moving on. Last week, she called me to tell me that her long-term boyfriend proposed and asked me to walk her down the aisle. In response, I told her that I was honored, but that I didn't think it was fair for me to take that moment from Jim, who was raised her since she was a toddler, just because we share the same DNA. She said that she actually wants us both to walk her down the aisle, one on either side. I told her that I didn't think it was fair to ask him to share that moment either, and that even if Jim said he was okay with it, and I'm sure he would because Jim wouldn't deny Jenny anything no matter how much it hurt his feelings, it would probably break his heart for her to ask that. After I said that, she said okay and hung up, but she hasn't been as happy to talk to me since. Am I the a-hole for saying no, or do I just need to give her some time to adjust? Edit 1. Thanks for all the advice. Last night, I called Jenny and apologized for hurting her feelings and asked her to meet Jim and me for Sunday brunch so that we could talk about and work out how to do this all together, so we'll hopefully come to an amicable solution that makes everyone happy. Edit number 2, post brunch update. Sorry this took so long. Brunch ran late. It kind of turned into lunch and then into the waitress giving us mean looks for hogging a table for so long, but the talk was productive and I tipped well, so I call this a win. And you know what, Matt? I'd also call it a win because you tipped your waitress. Well done, man. Okay, way to be nice, way to do it right. So we all met at the restaurant. Jenny, Jim, Jenny's fiance, who by coincidence has the same name as me, so we'll call him Other Matt, and of course myself. We beat around the bush for about 20 minutes while we ordered and waited for our food, and then we got down to it, and after a lot of discussion and reassurance that we all love each other very much, except in my case Other Matt, who barely knows me but seems alright, we came to a decision. I will walk Jenny into the church and pass her off to Jim, who will walk her down the aisle while I get to my seat. Thanks again to everyone for the advice, and I'm really looking forward to the wedding. So the Waffles verdict here, is he the a-hole? I don't think so. I think he's actually just trying to be really respectful to the guy who actually raised his daughter. I think it makes a good point, like just because you are by DNA, you know, father-daughter, that doesn't mean you're just auto awarded the right to like walk her down the aisle, because that's something like very sentimental for people and really important. So I think it was actually really cool of Matt here, the poster Matt, not the fiance Matt, to try his best to step aside. I understand why his daughter would be hurt because, you know, for her it was probably a big deal like meeting her father finally, and like she wanted him to be a part of her big special day. To be honest, the whole thing, it kind of just came down to like good intentions can still hurt feelings, but luckily they came to a good compromise for everyone to be happy, and good for Matt, and hopefully the fiance Other Matt ends up being a good guy too. Now looking at these comments, there's actually quite a few calling him the a-hole. I think the consensus on the post says no a-holes here. Yeah, so that's like the tag or whatever, but I'm assuming these people said you're the a-hole before the edits, because I think with the edits having that context of like you know, they came to a compromise and they're all understanding. Like, yeah, obviously no one's the a-hole now, but from the original post, I could see why you'd say he's the a-hole, even though, again, I would say it was good intentions on his part. But, you know, like I just said, good intentions can still lead to hurt feelings. So trust me, I've done that before, unfortunately, but that's a story for another day. Anyways, let's move on to story number 2. Am I the a-hole for switching to regular milk to prove my lactose intolerant roommate keeps stealing from me? Me and 2 other guys share an apartment together and we split all the bills. The only thing we don't split is costs on groceries. Everyone's in charge of buying their own food and we don't touch whatever doesn't belong to us in the fridge. I should mention we also put our names on everything so no one gets anything mixed up. This issue has been going on for almost a year now and I'm sick of it. One of my roommates, R, keeps stealing my food. I get home from work and containers with my leftovers are sometimes missing. Again, they have my name written on it. Or my stuff finishes too quickly. My gallon of milk, for example, I buy almond milk because I like the taste, but it seems to finish after a week even though I only drank it once or twice. I confronted R about it lots of times and that's caused a lot of arguments and he outright denies it and tells me I'm crazy even though it's so obvious. My other roommate and I carpool together because we both work these same early morning shifts around the same area, so I know it's not him. It's always after we get back home and R is already left for work that I notice my food's gone. My roommate also has a similar problem, but not as often as I do. I'm guessing because R doesn't like what he buys. The funny thing is, R buys a lot for himself and is even more stingy about his own food. He will literally point out what's his when he gets back from the grocery store and tells us not to touch it. Last week, my milk was nearly empty again and I got fed up, so I went to the liquor store and bought regular dairy milk. I drank what was left of my almond milk and then refilled the gallon with the regular dairy milk that I just bought. This was the catch/prove that R was the one stealing since he is lactose intolerant, and I gotta say, this is big brain by the OP here. It's kind of savage, but like big brain, well played. The next day, Saturday, we get back from work and R is pissed. He yelled at me that he was stuck in the bathroom for 40 minutes with diarrhea because of my milk. He was using it to make a shake. I only responded with, "So then you're the one who's been stealing." And after that, he freaking exploded. Yeah, he admitted he was quote unquote sometimes drinking my milk and eating my food, but he was more mad that I switched to milks than the fact that he was caught. I told him I wouldn't have done it if he had just stopped taking my stuff from the fridge or at least told the truth instead of trying to make it seem like I was making it up. My other roommate backed me up and thought it was kind of funny because we finally got payback from him stealing from us. Now it's a little tense right now and my roommate told me R is trying to convince him to agree to kick me out. Little does he know we're both looking to move somewhere else together because we are sick of living with him. I told some buddies what happened, and if you think I was the a-hole for that, I feel like that I'm not in the wrong here. He was taking my food and not even owning up to it, and I wanted to prove it. Does this make me the a-hole? I think this one's pretty open shut case. You know, if I was a lawyer, I would not worry about this one because it would be a simple not the a-hole. Okay, look, they have simple rules. I buy my food, you buy your food, and then we don't touch each other's food. It's that simple. And Mr. R over here, he couldn't get with that. He had to steal milk. Why are we stealing milk, by the way, too? Milk's not, I mean, it's gone up a little bit in price over the years, but it's not that expensive, dude. Just buy your own milk. Or, crazy thought here, right? So stores, they tend to sell stuff in different size containers. So here's a crazy thought. What if R went to the poster here and said, "Hey, you know, I actually really like almond milk too. Why don't we just split a big container?" Like, is it that crazy? Or even crazier, if he doesn't want to do that, just buy your own almond milk, dude. You don't have to steal. Like, what? I don't get it. I guess almond milk is a little more expensive than regular milk, now that I say that out loud, but still, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Obviously, he's not the a-hole. And genuinely, I think he went about it the best way in terms of proving it was him. Because outside of that, it's like, what, are you going to set up a camera in your fridge, like to catch him like a little gremlin? Like, no. Just send him to the bathroom, let him battle it out for 40 minutes, and then here we are. So shooting through the comments here, it's, yeah, not the a-hole. Shocker to absolutely no one. Even a lactose intolerant person said not the a-hole. So there's a little more credibility to that guy. Oh, I did find someone who did say the a-hole. He said you're still right technically, but doing that was not cool, essentially, which I guess. But dude, if you're stealing from a roommate, like you can go sit on the toilet for 40 minutes and battle your bowels because, like, come on, like grow up, man. Buy your own friggin' almond milk or just ask if you can have some. I mean, like, geez. Okay, moving on to the next story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my best friend have her wedding on my property after being uninvited? One of my 29 male best friends Carla, who's a 31 female, is getting married soon. It's only meant to be a small backyard type of wedding, but they've been planning it for a few months now, and originally it was supposed to be on my property. They wanted it because it's private, has lots of open space for the reception, a nice view, and the house could be used for them to get ready and stuff. Of course, I said yes. She and her fiance Rick were very happy. Thing is, Carla and I do have a history. We went out on and off in college, but decided to stay friends. Then I met my wife, we got married, Carla met Rick, and now here they are. Now my wife knows I went out with Carla back in college and she does not care. Carla still went to our wedding and everything. I never knew if Rick was told or not. It's not my relationship, therefore not my business to say anything, so I never did. And just kind of assumed he did. Apparently, Rick found out recently and not in the best way. Not sure how, but from what I heard, one mutual friend told him, I have no idea why he did that we used to date. Not only that, but apparently Carla said a couple years ago she was still in love with me when she was already dating Rick. I don't have actual confirmation if that's exactly what he was told, but that's just what I was told. All Carla's told me is that Rick was told about our past and he's angry at her for never saying anything. I'm not gonna lie, Rick, I feel you here. I would also be upset, okay? Let's be honest, right? It's kind of weird not to share, especially if they're still friends. Like, that would bother me too. So Rick, I'm kind of on your side so far, I'm not gonna lie. I guess not that this story is about him anyways, but there's my random input. This whole situation ended up becoming quite the drama, and I didn't hear from her for over a month until now. She told me they're going to couples counseling and that the wedding is still on, but Rick requested that I do not attend the wedding. It sucks, but I totally get why he wouldn't be comfortable. I'm going to interject here once again. I would also be kind of uncomfortable. I mean, I guess it depends on how serious they were, but still, it would just be kind of awkward. Like, you just want the day to be fun and like stress-free, which I know never happens at weddings, but that's always the goal. So I get that. Back to the story though. Then I asked the obvious question, where are they going to have the wedding then? And to my surprise, she said they still want to have it at our place. Rick said the same thing as well, and in my mind I'm going, he doesn't want the guy who dated his fiance years ago at the wedding, but he still wants to have the wedding at that same guy's house. And then essentially my wife and I are expected to just not be home that weekend. So as a result of this, I of course told Carla no, they're gonna have to find someplace else since we're not simply going to leave our home to them for the weekend. Not only for safety reasons, but it just doesn't make sense. Rick doesn't want me around because he's not comfortable, but is comfortable enough to have their wedding at my house. Like, that doesn't really make sense. They really want their wedding here though, and because of that, I've been bugged by not only her, but also Rick and some friends who think I'm being a petty a-hole for not letting them have the wedding here anymore. Honestly, I don't think I am. It just doesn't make sense to have to leave our own place for a wedding we're no longer welcome to and leaving our home totally vulnerable. Still being accused of sabotaging their wedding, and Rick believes it's the least I can do after everything. Am I the a-hole? Are you kidding? Dude, the ending of that actually just pissed me off. That's crazy. Rick, the guy who's thrown a fit, which again, I don't blame him, right? I would be uncomfortable. But you're going to say it's the least the homeowner could do, the guy who's not at fault for not sharing the fact that they dated, right? That is your fiance's fault, let's be honest. But you're going to say it's the least the guy who's not in the wrong. It's the least he could do. Dude, come on, get real, Rick. And regardless of all of this, the poster here was already doing this couple a huge favor by giving up their house for what's probably more than a weekend, I would guess, because you have to set everything up and then take everything down. So it's going to be at least, I guess it's what you define as a weekend, but if it's on Sunday, they're going to set up all day Saturday, if not Friday as well, and then take down probably Monday. So it's got to be at least like 4 days to set up and take down, I would think. So right there, they're already doing you a huge favor, and I don't know if there was compensation. No compensation was mentioned in the post, but if they were going to let you use their house for free and they change their mind, that is totally up to them, especially when you uninvite him to the wedding. I think the only way that the OP here would be the a-hole is if the wife was maybe still invited, and then even then, I still don't know. Like, it'd still be weird, but at least if the wife was there, you know, at least someone who owns the house would be there. You know, maybe the wife could have a +1 that's just not her husband, which is definitely kind of weird, but like, you know, just so she's not awkwardly sitting alone at the wedding. I don't know. It's, again, I get why Rick was pressed. I would also be pressed, but I would not be pressed at the guy who was going to give up his house to me for the weekend. Essentially, I would be pressed at my fiance for not just sharing the truth, because I mean, that's just weird. And especially if he, I don't know, I'm assuming he wasn't told about the fact that, you know, she was still in love with him when they first started dating, that Carla was in love with the poster here when they first started dating. I don't know. I sure hope not, because that would just Oh boy, talk about low confidence heading into a lifelong commitment. Jeez. Anyways, okay, let's just move on to the next one. Obviously, again, not the a-hole. Kind of started rambling there, but this story is like crazy to me. Am I the a-hole for laughing when my son came home from meeting his girlfriend's parents because he chose to behave like he does at home? My son burps a lot while eating. I've tried to tell him multiple times that it is rude. I've told him to slow down so he doesn't swallow air with his food, and I've told him that it's just generally disgusting. My wife will instantly jump in to defend him. She will say that it's just the way he is and that it's not his fault. The thing is he can't control himself when I remind him. He just chooses not to. He just went on a date with his girlfriend last night and she tore him a new poop chute. He used a different word there. It's kind of the main word of the subreddit, but YouTube doesn't like those words, so we'll call it a poop shoot. And it was his first time meeting her parents since they live in another city. They went out to a fancy restaurant and he burped all the way through supper. He came home almost in tears from her chewing him out for behaving like a donkey's behind in front of her family. I heard him telling my wife about it and I laughed. She asked what was so funny and I reminded them both that I'd tried dozens, if not hundreds of times to teach him table manners and he rejected them and she protected him. I said that now that he is a grown man, he had to learn the hard way. They both think that the girlfriend overreacted and that I'm being the a-hole here for being amused by his experience. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Now my first question before I, put my verdict here, right? My super important opinion that has I am just the all-knowing being. I am omnipotent. My opinion means everything. How old's the son? I'm going to scroll down and see maybe how old he is, because he's called him a grown man and oh no, he's 22. Oh goodness. Okay, already instant not the a-hole. If you're 22 and don't know, especially at a fancy restaurant, to not just burp throughout dinner, I mean, you gotta learn somehow, and I guess this is a good way to do it, being chewed out by your girlfriend. But dude, what, you're 22? I thought he was gonna be like 14. Like, I thought it was gonna be like the fancy dinner was gonna be like Olive Garden, and they just went there because that's not, like, it's a decent sit-down restaurant, but it's not that fancy. But I just assumed, because again, when you're burping through dinner, especially the first time you're meeting your girlfriend's parents, when you should be on your tip-top, goody two-shoes game, and you're just burping through dinner, I was like, oh, this guy, he's got to be 14, 15, maybe 16, and he's 22. Yeah, I mean, I don't have much else to say. Obviously, all the comments, not the a-hole, especially since people learn that he's 22. And it sounds like he's been warned countless amount of times. So even if he was 16, dude, if your dad tells you that a million times, maybe at least when you're meeting her parents, use your brain. I don't know. I guess the only a-hole thing he did was laughing at his son, which is that kind of mean? Yeah, but I think down the road it'll just be a funny story. At least I hope, because come on, this should be funny. You fumbled the bag here. Let's be honest. Okay, last thing about this story, I was looking through the comments. I was just kind of looking through, seeing if anyone brings up any points that I haven't thought of, because I know I just said I'm the omnipotent, all-knowing being with the most important opinion in the world. The average Twitter user, or I guess X. Hold on. Oh, geez, I just disproved my own point. And someone asked actually a really good question though, and they said, if OP burped in front of his wife at dinner, would she care or would she brush it off like she does for her son? And I'm just gonna assume, okay, this is not some big brain assumption. Let's be honest. We're all thinking the same thing here. The wife would get pissed at the husband. She'd say, oh, you're gross, blah, 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 blah. Because I'm assuming she's got that mama bear energy where her son just can't do anything wrong. I mean, the fact that the wife who, look, let's be honest, women tend to be a little more well-behaved and have just better manners in general. So the fact that the mom was defending the son and saying that the girlfriend overreacted, I mean, that just case closed right there, right? Clearly the mom is she is deep into, oh my goodness, my son can do no wrong. Because come on, we all know you shouldn't burp through dinner, especially at a fancy restaurant, okay? If you want to burp at dinner at home because your family doesn't mind, or, they think it's funny, or you got a younger brother who thinks it's funny, go ahead, okay? Live your life. I get it, right? Sometimes it's funny to be goofy and not have the best manners, okay? I understand that. But if you are meeting your girlfriend's parents for the first time, please do not go and burp through dinner, man. Anyways, that's it for this one. Let's move on to the next one. Am I the a-hole for sleeping naked on top of the covers to teach my roommate's girlfriend a lesson? This is already a crazy title. Let's just get into it. New to Reddit here, please bear with me. So I, 21 male, live with my childhood best friend, 22 male, and we've been living together for 2 years now. Up until last week, things have been perfect between us. However, he recently got a new girlfriend, 23 female, and honestly seemed absolutely great except for one thing. She seemingly has a complete aversion to knocking. She and I have quite a lot in common, and I actually like spending time with her. However, it bugs the crap out of me when she just barges into my room without knocking first. Now, she's never walked in on me doing anything, that she shouldn't see. I'm usually just chilling on my bed or studying at my desk. However, on at least 7 separate occasions, that's oddly specific by the way, I gotta admit, she's done it first thing in the morning to ask if I want coffee. For context, by the way, I do sleep naked. Luckily, every time prior to the last one, I've been under the covers and she hasn't seen anything. And when I point this out that she could have seen, all of me and too much of me, she just giggles and says, quote, "But I didn't." Now, when she stayed over last week in order to make my point, I intentionally slept on top of the covers, and sure enough, she barges in at 7 a.m., begins to ask if I want coffee, and sees my you-know-what. She immediately backed out of the room and didn't speak to me for the rest of the day. I'm not gonna lie, this sounds like a start to like a really crappy adult film, if you know what I mean. Like, oh no, you walked in on me. Oh, anyways, later that day, my roommate pulled me aside and said that I was completely out of order and accused me of deliberately exposing myself and pointed out that I threatened to do it before. Again, this quote unquote threat was me just saying, okay, but what if I had no covers and you saw everything? Now both of them are framing this to others that I'm some sort of sick creep who intentionally got naked and laid waiting for her because that's how I get my rocks off, and I'm kind of saying how it came off that way. Am I the a-hole for doing this? Alrighty, this one I'm gonna go with, it's kind of in the middle, okay? I think the consensus is looking like everyone said not the a-hole. For me, is it kind of weird exposing your whole body to your friend's girlfriend? Yes. Would I ever do that? No. If I was going to do that though, I would definitely not be laying on my back when she walked in. Because I mean, that's obviously going to make things weird. Okay. Like she doesn't need to see your little ding-a-ling. All right. Like what if instead, hear me out, right? If this was me, because this would not only make it funny, but also prove a point. Just lay on your stomach instead of laying on your back, right? Because then it still proves your point. She walked in on you naked, and then it's like, oh my God, what if he was on his back instead? And it's also just a butt. Like, it's not that deep, especially like it's just a guy's butt. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, who cares? And then after that, right, it's a funny story. It proves your point. And if they ever get married, you have the greatest, like, best man speech ever. Like, just imagine ending your speech with, oh yeah, by the way, the bride's seen my bare naked butt when they first started dating. And then you just like drop the mic and walk away. So is he the a-hole? No, I think he could have won about it better for sure, but she's the one barging in. You've literally warned her multiple times too. So at this point, if I was the poster's friend who's actually dating the girl, I would be pissed at her, because if you've been warned 6 times or 7 times, whatever it was, and you're still barging in, to me, that just kind of feels like you're like trying to catch him naked, which is weird to me. I mean, maybe you're not, and maybe you're just like, oh, if it happens, it'll be funny, but like, it's just kind of weird. Like, just knock, okay? Or just, you know what? If he asks for coffee every day, just leave it on the counter, okay? And I'll come get the coffee. Also, if you're wondering like I was, I just looked through the comments and he said he didn't have a lock on his door, nor can he put one on. So that's why he can't just lock the door. Granted, you could probably get like a non-permanent door stop, like just get a door stopper and put it right in front of the door. But yeah, that's going to do it for today. That is 5 Reddit stories. Maybe I'll switch up the subreddit we go on next time just to mix it up a little bit. I know relationship advice has some good stuff, but if you have any recommendations, let me know. Anyways, if you made it this far, thank you very much. More will be on the way. And if you want to see that, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to help me out, a like always does help. But regardless, most importantly, I hope you have a good day and stay safe out there. The world's kind of crazy. So I'll see you in the next one.